There are absences in the galaxy that no astropath has pierced, not the emptiness of the void's endless breadth, for even there the warp presses through, muttering and gnashing in the ears of those who dare to listen. This absence is older, deeper, deliberate. It is the hush of something concealed, as though the fabric of history itself has been folded to conceal a wound beneath. When worlds perish, they leave their remains. Burned cities linger as cinder crowns visible from orbit. Broken hulks still cast shadows across suns, and even the dust carries the stain of the fallen. Yet there are regions where memory itself collapses, where testimony falters into hesitation, where records break off as if recoiling from what lies beneath. In such voids of recollection, a shape begins to suggest itself, not in what is spoken, but in what is withheld. The oldest Mechanicus litanies proclaim that all knowledge once belonged to mankind, that the sum of mastery flowered in an age long extinguished. Yet even their scripture stutters, pausing where thought dares not pass. Something endured from that age, carried like a splinter beneath the skin of time, waiting for the hand of accident or desperation to drag it back to light. Those who have glimpsed it seldom speak, and when they do, their words fall flat, emptied of warmth, as though to name it risks drawing the gaze of something that has never ceased to listen. Think of the stars above Vigilus, their light refracted through the empiric wound that split the firmament in half. During that campaign, there were movements never tallied in official annals, fleets that faltered, champions who recoiled, both sides of the eternal conflict shifting as if a hidden hand had stirred the void. Battle records insist upon nothing unusual, yet the veterans who staggered away bore eyes that turned from their confessor's gaze. A word passed between them, almost unvoiced, and then was dropped, as though even to remember was a danger. The galaxy is heavy with names. Some are shouted in triumph, some carried in prayer, some scrawled into the dirt by dying hands. This one is different. It comes without lineage, without heraldry, without proper record. It is the shard of a greater truth, a jagged edge of history never meant to be pieced together. And so we arrive at the threshold, guided only by questions. What hand wrought it? What cause did it serve? And why, above all else, was it concealed? The stars give no answer. They endure, patient and remote, as they always have. The legends of humanity's ascendancy speak of a time when machines were more than tools, when thought and matter interwove in ways incomprehensible to the fragmented scholars of the present age. That span, later cursed and mythologized as the Dark Age of technology, was an epoch where every frontier was crossed and every obstacle seemed momentary. Its collapse remains one of the greatest tragedies ever carried forward into memory, and the wreckage of that era still haunts the Imperium's wars. Among the broken shards of its mastery are relics, isolated, inexplicable, and terrifying in implication. The Voidclaw belongs to this class of inheritance. To speak of the Voidclaw is to acknowledge that human science once reached beyond even the Adeptus Mechanicus's most sacred vaults. Its nature remains obscured even in the reports that dare mention it. Some describe a device fashioned for the tearing of fleets from the fabric of reality, a weapon whose strike resembled the rending of cloth by unseen talons. Others insist upon its singular precision, as though it were less a blunt instrument and more a scalpel that could pluck chosen prey from the stars. The contradiction itself reveals the deeper truth. The Imperium does not truly understand what it faces when such relics stir. The Dark Age's remnants often arrive with no context, unmoored from the laboratories and thought forges that birthed them. An ark drifting for millennia may carry a cache of weaponry that its custodians died before explaining. A vault unearthed beneath a dead city may hum with energies that cannot be duplicated or safely examined. Such fragments mock the priesthood of Mars, forcing them into paradox. They worship the machine god as the source of all craft, yet find themselves confronted by creations that prove humanity once commanded divinities of its own design. The Voidclaw presses this paradox to its breaking point. On Vigilus, its presence was not heralded with banners or grand invocations. Instead, fleets shifted course, trajectories altered, and void-born engagements ended in ways that defied tactical precedent. Vessels reported vanishing from Auspex arrays, only to reappear as wreckage scattered across improbable vectors. Testimonies collected by survivors described luminous fractures opening in the dark, spreading like taloned hands before collapsing into nothingness. The Mechanicus offered no explanation, delivering only guarded pronouncements that no further inquiry should be made. Their reluctance revealed more than any of their words. What should one make of such power? If the Voidclaw was a single device, its potency already reshapes our understanding of the war it touched. If, however, it was not unique, if it represents a category of armament once fielded widely during the Long Dark, then the scale of what was lost to human civilization is beyond grief. Consider the fleets of the Imperium today, lumbering, ponderous, mighty in their way but constrained by the hazards of the warp. Now imagine them armed with devices capable of rupturing the fabric of void space itself, erasing adversaries not through attrition, but through annihilation beyond recovery. The comparison is unbearable. Thus, the Voidclaw stands as more than a weapon. It is a reminder. It reveals, through its rare manifestations, that humanity once commanded terrors so vast that even the legions astartes and the most zealous crusaders of the ecclesiarchy would blanch to wield them. To lose such mastery was not mere regression. It was the sundering of destiny itself. Every time the Voidclaw is whispered of, it does not simply mark a battle. It points back to a threshold where mankind held the galaxy in its grasp, only to watch it all disintegrate into fragmentation, old night, and the slow construction of the Imperium upon the bones of dreams. The question presses inexorably. Why did such devices survive at all? Why, amid the storms that ended the Dark Age, were certain artifacts entombed rather than destroyed? Whose hand judged them too potent to discard, yet too dangerous to wield openly? If we follow those questions, we find ourselves moving not only through history, but into theology. For these engines are no longer inert machinery. They have become symbols, forced into the economy of faith and fear. And so the Voidclaw becomes not just a relic of a vanished epoch, but an emblem of the danger in remembering what was once possible. The Omnissiah's disciples treat it as a fragment of forbidden scripture, the Inquisition as a potential heresy waiting to erupt, and the warriors who face it as a phantom that reshapes the very laws of battle. To dwell upon it is to stand at the threshold of a greater abyss, the abyss of what else still lies buried, waiting to awaken. When the Imperium encounters a relic of the Long Dark, the weight of the find is measured not in tonnage, but in consequence. The Voidclaw is such a burden, a shard of history that refuses to remain inert, dragging all who encounter it into confrontation with what was lost. It is a fragment of mankind's true inheritance, thrust into an age that cannot interpret it without distortion. The questions it raises are as destructive as the weapon itself. Lore tells us that the Imperium rests on two pillars: the authority of the Emperor and the vigilance of his institutions. Yet both falter before devices such as this. The Inquisition demands knowledge and control, but many of its lords would obliterate the Voidclaw outright, fearing the corruption that might follow its study. The Mechanicus preaches that the Omnissiah revealed all things to mankind, yet here is proof of a mastery they cannot reproduce, a mystery that renders their creed fragile. The Astra Militarum and Adeptus Astartes, though pragmatic in their wars, see in such a weapon both promise and dread. Promise of victory, dread of a foe that might seize it first. In every case, the relic warps the institution that beholds it, showing them their own frailties. Consider the enemies of mankind. Chaos would seek to twist it, to bend its capacity for void-rending into a mirror of the warp's own ravening hunger. The Eldar, whose dwindling wisdom yet holds echoes of the ancient galaxy, would no doubt recognize in it another mark of humanity's rise and fall, perhaps even a thing they once feared. The Tyranids would consume without comprehension, and in so doing prove the futility of hoarding such legacies. Every rival power of the galaxy confirms the same truth. The Voidclaw does not belong to the Imperium alone. It belongs to the whole theatre of galactic history, as a reminder of what mankind once imposed upon it. Speculation invites darker reflections. Was the Voidclaw unique? Or was it merely one instrument among thousands forged in the forges of the Long Dark? If the latter, then every battle humanity fights today is a parody of what could have been. Imagine if Terra's fleets had borne such engines during the Great Crusade. Imagine if the siege of the palace had been waged with weapons that could rend traitor fleets apart with strokes of invisible talons. Imagine, too, the horrors unleashed had Horus himself turned such devices upon his father's realm. In every imagining lies both triumph and damnation. The theology of the Imperium must therefore reconcile itself with a paradox. If such things were forged by human hands, then the line between divinity and invention blurs to nothing. What then becomes of the Omnissiah's creed, which insists that only revelation makes truth? And if the Emperor himself preserved fragments of that bygone mastery, as many whisper, does this mean he feared mankind's own creations as much as he feared demons? The Voidclaw speaks without words, answering none of these questions, yet forcing every institution to bend beneath the strain of asking them. And so we arrive at reflection. The Voidclaw is a weapon, but more than that, it is a mirror. It shows us humanity's capacity not only to master the galaxy, but to fracture itself irreparably. It stands as testimony that the past is not a place of innocence, but of peril, where every advance carried the seed of collapse. To hold the Voidclaw is to feel the shadow of mankind's former glory pressing down, and to know that the Imperium endures in spite of, rather than because of, what once was. The veterans of Vigilus spoke little of it. Their eyes carried the weight of things no catechism could ease. Among them, the word itself was passed like a coal too hot to bear. They did not need to agree upon what it meant. They only knew that it meant more than war, more than victory, more than loss. It meant that even in the age of the God Emperor, the past still has claws, and they reach forward to drag the present down with them. In the end, all that remains are fragments, scattered reports, distorted recollections, guarded sermons, and one word spoken into the void. From these ashes, testimony endures. And though the stars themselves remain mute, the relic reminds us still. History is never buried deep enough to forget.